Yeah? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So please take a seat. And okay, we are here today and in this moment to for an exciting launch of the first Copernicus Health Hub. And I'm really happy to be here with you today and with the people that are joining us online. Yeah, it's really an exciting moment for all of us that work on this hub, and I hope that I mean, you will see how much effort we put on the creation of this new tool for Copernicus. So I invite here Maria Berradal from DigiDefis to give us some a welcome speech for this event. Please, Maria.
Thank you, Christina. And hello again, everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor, I would say, to be part of the opening of this Copernicus Thematic Health Hub. So the Copernicus Thematic Hubs were introduced as a new element in Copernicus 2, so the phase that we are currently in, to ease the access to data and products from all over Copernicus. Of course, you know the Copernicus structure. We have our different components and services, and it is a structure that we are content with, but there's always room for improvements, right? Some information in Copernicus is cross-disciplinary or scattered all over the Copernicus ecosystem, or even has a very specific user segment who might not be very familiar with Earth observation at all. For these reasons, the thematic hubs were suggested as new elements into the system. So let me just read you a few paragraphs from the first document, at least the first one I could find, describing the thematic hubs. And back then, they were known as knowledge hubs. So the main objective of the Copernicus Knowledge Hubs is, for a given high-level topic, both thematic or focused on specific geographical areas, to regroup under one single entry point at the level of the Copernicus program, the ensemble of data, products, and information generated by several Copernicus services or components. The thematic or geographic scope of these Copernicus Knowledge Hubs, now thematic hubs, should be clearly traceable back to specific policy needs at the European Union level. These knowledge hubs will allow the program to address a range of policy aspects which can hardly be addressed by a single Copernicus service, such as issues dealing, for instance, with policy coherence or the mainstreaming of specific strategic elements in different policies and addressing geographic regions of interest to the European Union. So it was a very general idea. The details are not specified here. There is no roadmap and no proposed structure that we just handed over to the entrusted entities that are in lead of the first hubs that we're starting. And now, a bit more than a year later, the pilot phases of the first hubs are launched. I would say that the initial idea that I just read corresponds pretty well to the current work of the hubs, and that the entrusted entities now really own the idea of their respective hubs and also the development. So we have now 4 thematic hubs starting up, and this selection was based on which topics were most mature, but also on suggestions from the Copernicus User Forum. Last week, we had the launch of the Coastal thematic hub, and today we have the launch of the Health Hub. Later this year, we'll also open the Energy Hub and the Arctic thematic hub. So I'm involved in 3 of these hubs, and I would say that they really get some traction. And so far, it seems like the user groups that we want to reach actually are reachable with the scope of the hubs. And for the Health Hub and the Energy Hub, there are also the advisory boards, and the other hubs, they have other means to collect user requirements and feedback. And we'll hear from some of these new users a bit later in this event, and it'll be very interesting to hear their initial assessments. Another nice effect from the setting up of the hubs is the closer interaction between the different services. So right now we are at this point launching all of the hubs, and we will have a pilot phase and the evaluation will come eventually. We'll see if or what amendments are needed. But right now, we just have to launch them and let the users test them and have a test phase, and then we'll stake out the direction and the development at a later point. I'm very excited to follow this development further, and yes, and also the rest of this event. So, thank you.
So, thank you, Maria. And now is the time for Vincent Ripoch, the director of CAMS, to introduce the concept of the thematic hub.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Maria, for introducing thematic hubs in general and the Health Hub specifically. To sum up, it's really this extract from the Three Musketeers. It's the thematic hubs are one for all and all for one. And I think a big part of the benefit of the activity is, as Maria was saying, bringing more closely together the different services. Of course, in CAMS, we had already a very close relationship with the C3S, but building the Health Hub was an opportunity to liaise more closely with all 6 services, including the emergency, or the security one, which has many interested entities. And I think the value of it, it is in part what will be launched today, the website, etc., but also in the journey to get there, the discussion with the interested entities, but also the discussion with the stakeholders, potential users. And I think today you will have a very interesting program, presentations by members of our advisory board for the Health Hub, but also from key DGs to set the scene. The aim of the day is to convince you, if it's not already the case, that Earth observation-based services are actually already a big input to the health community, and that there is much more potential. And to finish, I will just say that I'm very glad that to launch thematic hub like the Health Hub, we don't need a rocket. So we are able to launch today, and I'm very glad to be here. And now the floor to presenting you in more detail what is the Health Hub, what is under the hood.
Thank you, Vincent. So now the floor to Julie Letêtre. She is working at TCMWF in my team, and I'm very proud to have her here presenting the Copernicus Health Hub, and with the support also of David Armstrong, team leader for communication, that will explore a little bit together with you the website and the catalog. Julie, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for being here with us to celebrate the launch of the Copernicus Health Hub. It was a long journey for us. It was like 1 year we started ago. And I can say that I'm really proud to be here today, because it's not the work of one person, it's not the work of two persons, but it's really the work of a lot of persons. It's the work of people who have given their time on their spare time to help to build that. And I'm really proud to be here today on their name. So here is few people listed, but as I said, there's many, many others in it. So as Maria just stated, we had 1 year ago, we were given some tasks, some text to work on it. That is a text that was written by Maria. And we've been told that we need to work on health according to that, and later on energy. And we didn't really know where to start, where to go, what was the users needed. It was plenty of questions in our head. So we all reunited, we all think about what we wanted to do. And our first question was, actually, what is health? Because we were given a topic on health, but what does that mean? It's a lot of policy actually ongoing about One Health, with the health of the human, but biodiversity and the health of the planet. So we had to find one target, and our target really on discussion was actually we meant the health of the human. But health of the human is already another vast subject. We have the physical health, that sounds obvious, but we also have mental health and well-being. And today, we are actually in the great venue. We are here in Valencia, and you can see around you how environment is impacting on your health. Outside, you have a bright sunshine that can bring you, unfortunately, some disease. Just your eyesight. If you look too much in a bright light, you will get some impairment of your eyes. If you stay for too long in the sunshine, you can have skin cancer. But on the other hand, going in the sunshine brighten up your mood. On the other hand, being in the sunshine brings you vitamin D. So our environment is impacting on every part of our health. Now maybe some of you have gone for a swim, and again, in the water, what is the quality of water? What does that impact on your health? How current here we are in the Mediterranean, is fine. But if you're in the Atlantic Ocean, for example, you have some submarine current, and that can be dangerous for you. You can have so many ways to be impacting by your environment. Climate change. Here we have some mosquito. It was a lot of rain lately, and mosquitoes have developed in Valencia. That is coming, and that can give you disease. So our environment is really a big factor on our health. So when we started 1 year ago, we were looking on who could be the actor of the health hub. So first thing first, obviously, was the Copernicus services. Every services had something to bring. But it was not that obvious in first place. We thought like, okay, some might be obvious, but some how? And we started to have interaction with every service, and every service was bringing help and bringing light on how they can contribute. And we can say that today, they're all happy to be here with us to join on this project. We also have some users identified, like DG Santé, DG Climat, WHO, ECDC, is plenty of good actors. Sometimes they were already involved with us, sometimes not yet. And during that year, we've managed to reach several of them. We also had the support of the KCO and DG DEFIS. They were coming with brilliant ideas and helping us to reach even more DGs. And also, we decided to get the support of an advisory board. The advisory board is really there to help us to better understand the health community. We are Earth observation people, we are Earth observation service, but we don't have, obviously, the knowledge on health. And it's always a big discrepancy between the lexicology you use in one field to another. So sometimes it's difficult to fully understand, to fully be online. And the advisory board is also here to help us to better know which language to use. So here are the 4 members of our advisory board, and some of them will have some presentation. But you can see that we had some people coming from policymakers, but we also have scientists that are here to build up the future and help us to have even more interaction between health and environment. So few use cases, because is where we start to build up, is where we can start to see which kind of data can be useful for the health community. So here is an example of CAMS data that are used by the citizen. So Pacifo, it's a group that has developed an application that you can have on your smartphone. Based on CAMS data, you know how many pollen you have in the environment, and it's also based on artificial intelligence. So everybody can use this application, enter their symptom in the application, and day after day, the application is learning about your symptom. And at one point, is ready to tell you, look, the forecasting will tell you that it will be that amount of pollen, of the right type of pollen, and maybe you will have an asthma crisis. So please bring your inhaler with you in your pocket. And that can be a game changer for this kind of people. Another example I was mentioning earlier, the mosquitoes. So ECDC and Vito work together using C3S data to make the forecasting of the development of mosquitoes, because with the climate change, the conditions are changing and the development of mosquitoes happen in different ways. Of course, mosquito by itself doesn't carry always disease, but they will go and take a part of blood of someone who has a disease and go on someone else and transmit the disease. We don't have the knowledge of the disease, but we have the knowledge how these mosquitoes can develop. Another example of collaboration between the services was this report bringing together the land service, the emergency service, and the climate change service, building up a report on climate adaptation for urban. It's a good example on how all the services can work already together and contribute to one and same topic. Last but not least of my use cases, here I was mentioning earlier, if you go to have a swim in the sea, what are the impact of the different pollutants that are going in the sea? And I think you're all looking probably forward to go for your summer vacation, and probably you don't want to take you or your family at risk. So, as it was mentioned, we have the collection of a lot of Earth observation data, product, information, and here are the different providers that are contributing. And you can see that is really the collaboration of a lot of people. We are all working on together to give you the most of what we can on the environment basis. So here we are, it's a big time. The launch is official. The website has been released a few minutes ago. You can go on it. We have been lucky to have two, I will mention two, but it's much more, but I had two amazing people who helped us to build this website, David Armstrong and Eva Remetes. And we also had the health data store, have been developed by Angel and Eduardo. And I really want, in name of everybody, thank them for the good efforts they have put in it. And now I will let the floor to one of them. I will let David to get you through the Copernicus Health Hub.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks very much. So I'll talk really very briefly, and Julie's too modest. You did all the work, along with Eva. So I'll talk you through the rationale, I'll give you an overview of the look, feel, and the design for the Health Hub. First and foremost, it's a Copernicus hub. It's not a CAMS website, even though we're launching it here today and CAMS is coordinating it. It's not a new service. So that, it's here to enable users to find what they need from the Copernicus ecosystem without having to go to all the Copernicus services, and that's its job. That is a governing principle, along with the fact that it should be replicable and flexible. We want to make it as future-proof as possible for other hubs in the future to also adopt this approach, should it be appropriate. So if you look at the color palette we've chosen, we've really lent into the Copernicus logo, blue, the gold/yellow, and the whites. It's a clean site, but it's clearly a Copernicus site, and also has service neutrality, because again, it's on behalf of all the services. In terms of wording, we've gone with very simple, does what it says on the tin, Health Hub. We could have gone along the lines of creating emblems, but the services have emblems. And again, this is not a service website. And if we went down that route, we'd probably have to get into a sort of consistency with future hubs, do all the pictograms look the same. So this is far better for the user. It's also more flexible for any interested entity or any future hubs that come online. And because you can just replace health with energy, with cultural heritage, it's a really simple visual device up there in the header. Also, talking about words, you will have heard us talk about the Copernicus thematic hubs. Internally, we use that, it's understood. Externally, we need something far simpler. Thematic can be a bit of a barrier for an external audience. It's an unnecessary word. So again, keeping it simple. It does what it says on the tin. Lastly, the template, that'll also be very familiar. It's the Copernicus website template. You've got your great hero image there, your mission statement, the ability to focus on the content that you want to drive users to, but also that they might be looking for. And then down at the bottom in the footer here, you can see reference to all the Copernicus services. So this template, it's readily available for any interested entity. It's readily available for us. We could adapt it easily, efficiently, took no time at all. and it means we can use it again in future. So that is the overview of our approach. I'm going to hand back to Julie to talk about the content, which is the important bit. Thank you.
So thank you very much, David. So I will take you a little bit through the website, but I would encourage you later on, at the end of the day or at the break, to have a proper site by yourself. So on this website, we have decided to cut the subject, as I was explaining before, on between physical health, mental health, and well-being. What we hope you to understand from it is how the data can be used. So most of the website is based on use cases and explanation. We also have some access to the product, and we will see later on the health data store. But we also have access to some trainings, to some events, and also some help and support. You also have access, so as I said, we have made the health data store to be a first point of contact for the health community. So the purpose is to put the data accessible for the health community with a simplifier language for you to understand. But behind, the data stays the same. So after that, when you go one step further, you can have access to the full data and the full metadata. Another way to be done can be also to be used the Wikio platform, where you can also have access to the data. So as I was saying, you can have access to the products and data, and here is few of the cards that you can click on to have access to them. But if you look, for example, at the physical health page, you can see how we can divide on between different subjects like extreme temperature, air quality, vector-borne disease, and water-related disease, and is even more on the page. Usually on the side, you can see on the sidebar that we try to link with the user story that can be relevant for that topic. So here it is, the catalog that people have done an amazing job on it, and I'm really proud again to be able to present it to you. So the catalog is an access point, is a way, again, to make it really simplified for the health community. But every time you will click on it, you will have access to more information, and then you will arrive to the data set by itself. We also have on this catalog again, the use cases, and with a direct link to every data set that have been used in every use cases. In this catalog, you will also find the access to the different services. For you also, if you want to go deeper in more detail on every services, you can do it. So here are the use cases, a few of them. It's even more of the website. And you can see the variety of subjects and across every services. Some are under demand, so you can have access under demand, but that doesn't mean you don't have access. It's just a simple email can give you access to information and data if it's possible. So training events, for the moment, is a little bit empty. We're starting, but hopefully will be more events coming, and more things will happen in the future. So stay tuned, keep your eyes on this page. Hopefully it will be more. And the help and support. At the end of the day, maybe today you will not have the occasion to ask your question. It's still an access point. You can still reach us. We are more than happy to discuss with you. And on that, I will finish for now. And I will thank you very much all. And I think we will let the expert talk now.
So thank you, Julie, again. And now we have to change a bit the perspective. So far, you listened from our side, meaning ECMWF or Copernicus side. Now we have some experts that are coming from the health domain, and they have to support us in this process. So as Julie mentioned before, we work with some of them during this year of preparatory phase, and now they are here to present, let's say, their needs and what they can contribute, how they can contribute to our health hub, but on the other side, how we can support them in their activities. So they are online, and the first person, the first guest, is Philippe Roux. Yeah, okay, we can see you. Good afternoon. He is the head of unit at DG Sante for the European Commission. The unit is Cancer Health in All Policy. So, Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure for me to join today this launch of the Copernicus Health Hub. Of course, the first thing which I would like to do is to thank the Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecast for driving this important initiative that will allow us to make better use of satellite data for public health. But I don't pretend being an expert. I'm more here to an honest broker supporting policymakers from my position in the Commission. I would want just to put in context this launch, because behind the noise of the current events, we must not lose sight of the triple crisis of climate change, environmental pollution, and biodiversity loss. This crisis threatens our ecosystems, human health, and well-being across generations. Climate change has become a reality much faster than all scenarios predicted. Heat wave, storms, and floods are becoming more frequent. I mean, I understand that in the south today in Spain, it's raining and difficult, where me being at the moment in Luxembourg, I'm over the heat. This change in environmental and climatic conditions, of course, are facilitating spread of vector-borne disease outbreaks together with other water or foodborne pathogenic diseases. And already we calculated that more than 13 million deaths around the world can be attributed to avoidable climate and environmental causes. And this reminds us, I think, the hard way how human health, animal health, and the environment are together interdependent. And therefore, we must firmly consider a One Health approach and integrate all the different elements and balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and our ecosystems. Because, let's be clear, disturbance to one of these will clearly impact on the others. So with the creation of a strong European Health Union, our objective in the Commission was and still is to better anticipate this emerging threat and to inform policy decisions and operational responses. I mean, that's for us very central. And for this reason, and to further strengthen these efforts, the Commission has adopted a new regulation, perhaps you have heard about, which is on serious cross-border threat to health. And this regulation further enhances the European Health Union capacity in prevention, preparedness, and response planning. It improves epidemiological surveillance and coordination. It strengthens early warning and responses, including to environmental threats. And it ramps up our capacity to react to further crises, which is for me the most important. However, we cannot follow an adaptation strategy that solely relies on emergency response. Our societies are getting older, and the incidence of critical health conditions such as cardiovascular and respiratory diseases and mental disorder, as mentioned earlier by Julie, is on the rise. We must raise our resilience to health threats. Of the key elements for this is to reduce incidence of non-communicable diseases that are, in vast number of cases, preventable. For this reason, the Commission launched the Healthier Together non-communicable disease initiative, providing a framework for actions on 5 key targets. This includes cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, mental health, as mentioned earlier, as important also, and neurological disorders. Health determinants are a specific focus of the initiative, and these are key when it comes to health promotion and prevention of diseases. Further, and you see how comprehensive we try to be, through the recent adopted EU Global Health Strategy, we aim to shape a challenging landscape with increasing impact on climate change and new geopolitical challenges. I will not mention into details, but we also had a focus on mental health. In June, early June, we adopted a communication with a comprehensive approach to mental health. And we put at disposal of the 20 flagships that have been identified more than 1.3 billion euro for the issue and for actions in member states. So ambitious climate targets goes hand in hand, of course, with lowering health harmful substance emissions. Air pollution increases the risk of heart diseases, stroke, cancer, dementia, and diabetes. Cause new asthma cases in children and damage nearly every organ in the human body. Exposure to air pollution, carcinogenic chemicals, radon, UV radiation, secondhand smoke may be responsible for over 1/10 of the total cancer burden in Europe. And for this reason, with the European Cancer Plan, we and closely to the Zero Pollution Action Plan, and with a particular focus on its flagship on reducing inequalities through the zero pollution, we have developed a number of activities. In fact, while I'm speaking here, my colleagues are presenting at a workshop in Brussels the new environmental indicators modules of the European Cancer Inequalities Registry. It aims to shed lights on trends and disparities across the EU, to better inform and direct decision-making at EU, national, and local levels. And I think that's important to mention, it's at all levels. The current indicator sets integrates data on exposure to environmental pollutant and related cancer burden. The example of the Cancer Inequality Registry illustrates that for policy action to be successful, it is critical that we have timely and good quality data, which allow us to follow up continuing developments to identify change that may require an immediate policy or operational response. The more accurate the information gathered, the sounder the decision made, and the better the result can be achieved. And for these reasons, we launched the so-called European Climate Change and Health Observatory, building on a strong partnership with key organizations active in the field. The observatory is making available in one place an unprecedented wealth of timely, detailed, and authoritative information on climate change and health. The European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast and this Health Hub is one of our partners in the initiative. And we're happy that with the launch today, we will have a new portal with broader focus on environment and health. This hub will be one of the building blocks for creating a knowledge base, accompanying and supporting the work of the European Climate and Health Observatory. The hub will allow scientists, policymakers, including the local and regional, to tap into the wealth of satellite data, as mentioned before, collected by the different Copernicus services. And that will allow us to really combine these data and with other data sources, and indeed be more able to conceive answers to crises that are observable. So on behalf of DG Santé of the Commission, I would like to thank the colleagues from the ECMWF, and I'm looking at in particular Julie and Christina, for their work and dedication in making this project a reality. And I know what I'm talking about. I know how difficult it is to make a project live, and it was a pleasure for me to see it starting just before our eyes today. And I hope that the data that is produced and that the services that are provided will be a great success and only a starting point. Thank you very much. Oh God. Climate change is impacting also here.
Thank you, Philippe, for your words. And yeah, it's true that in some months that we are working and discussing with your team and with you on this Copernicus Health Hub. You already mentioned, but I have one question that maybe if you can add some more concrete example on how this thematic hub can support you as a policymakers at the European Commission addressing some policy needs.
Well, as you rightly said, I already sort of mentioned it. I mean, what is the most important for us is to have a very fast data and information that we can use to develop policy responses. May I give you one example? I mean, if you take the example of the data that we have through our channels on health, for instance, with ESTAT. And of course, ESTAT is authoritative, and I would not discuss the point. But data from ESTAT to reach the Commission and to be used, you need 2 years. And so whichever new tool that allow to have nearly on direct, I would say, data and information is very important, and that is essential to us. I mean, we have seen that through COVID, we have seen that through recent crises. It's important to be able to be fast, and all what satellites and all what the health stuff can offer is crucial for that.
Okay, thank you, Philippe, again for being here today with us. And yeah, I think that we can move to the next presentation. Alexandra Kazmierska from the European Environment Agency. Are you online, Alessandra?
I am indeed.
Yes, we cannot see you. Just 1 second, you should appear on our screen. So Alessandra is working at EEA, and she's an expert in environment, human health, and well-being at the agency, and she's also a member of the advisory board that is supporting us in the process. Here you are. Hi, Alessandra. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks for inviting me. I would like to start by congratulating the team and Julie and colleagues in particular for putting together this wonderful health hub that will be really, really useful for our work. And the work, especially in the context of the European Climate and Health Observatory. So I will put a short presentation on in a moment in which I can explain a bit how we've already been benefiting from the data and information from various Copernicus services and how we hope to collaborate with the Health Hub in the future. I hope my screen is visible right now.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, so just to maybe explain, and Philippe gave a short introduction to this initiative. The European Climate and Health Observatory is an initiative of the European Commission, and it includes then as partners the European Environment Agency, ECMWF, and the broader Copernicus program as well, a couple of EU agencies, ECDC and EFSA, but also WHO Europe, Lancet Countdown in Europe, which will be later introduced in more detail by a colleague from Lancet, as well as two organizations that joined us recently, and we hope will be our link into the world of public health practitioners. So the International Association of National Public Health Institutes and the Association of Schools of Public Health in the European region. So the observatory is a partnership, but we also have a portal which, as Philippe says, is aiming to collate, but also develop then knowledge relevant to climate change and health. The observatory was set up in recognition that we still don't have sufficient knowledge on climate change impacts on health, and that we know even less about the solutions that we should be employing in order to prevent the loss of well-being and loss of lives. So the decision was taken to set up the European Climate and Health Observatory within the existing European adaptation portal Climate Adapt. It was then solidified in the European climate law that the role of the observatory is to better understand, anticipate, and minimize the health threats caused by climate change. We have several strategic objectives that were set up in discussion with our partners. Firstly, we would like to enable our users to monitor the main risks to health from climate change, the impacts, but also the solutions. We would also like to support the mainstreaming of adaptation into national health planning, and vice versa, the inclusion of health into the national adaptation strategies. We would like to be the hub that provides the data that supports the public authority in responding to climate-related threats in a timely manner, increase the awareness of climate change impacts on health among the public health and healthcare practitioners especially, but also to enable then sharing of solutions that can be implemented. And I strongly believe that the Copernicus data, and especially through the just launched Health Hub, can really support us in meeting those objectives. What we currently have in the scope of the European Climate and Health Observatory are, for example, then forecasts from the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service that are looking at then UV radiation, but also then ground level ozone concentration. So the users can access it through the portal, as well as gaining some additional information about why it matters under then changing climates. What are the projections and what are the impacts on human health. We've also had quite a close collaboration with colleagues from the Copernicus Climate Change Service, and we include projections of variables that are, for example, projecting the changing climatic suitability for tiger mosquito, which is a vector of dengue and other diseases, as well as the projections of heat waves. What we do through the interface of the European Climate Data Explorer is present this data at the level of administrative units, and therefore hopefully bringing it closer to the decision makers, not just at the European level, but also at the national and subnational levels. We've been also using the data produced within Copernicus Climate Change Service sectoral programs on health. So the modeling of urban heat island effect that we put together with then data from Eurostat on the location of schools and hospitals in order to be able to assess how many of those are actually located within a strong urban heat island effect, and therefore may be at risk of higher heat stress. And for example, Today, we just launched a new application through the EEA website, which is showing drawing attention to the extreme summer weather, and within that we have a little section that allows to actually look at the location of individual schools or hospitals in relation to urban heat island effect. But then Copernicus data has not just been used directly through the observatory, but also has been used by our partners. And I'm sure that Kim will say a few more words about it. But for example, it's been integrated in indicators looking at the changing climatic suitability for transmission of malaria in the last decades, and integrated with data on the share of people working in highly exposed jobs, to be able to assess the impacts on the amount of hours that people working, for example, in forestry can lose as a result of higher temperatures. We are also working closely with the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service, and for example, we've been using the Urban Atlas data to be able to understand where the green spaces are located in cities. And again, by putting it together with the data from Eurostat and seeing whether the surroundings of hospitals and schools is sufficiently green. And actually, it turns out it isn't, that the surroundings of the European schools and hospitals on average tend to be much less green than the cities in general, suggesting an area for action. So we've been integrating the Copernicus data and the knowledge based on it in our key outputs. And last year we produced a report on climate change impacts on health and well-being through heat and infectious diseases. And next year we are aiming to publish a similar report, which would be looking at the impacts of climate change on human health through changed water quantity and quality. So we are hoping that we can extend a really good collaboration to the other Copernicus services to sort of bring in the ocean and marine data and so on. So I'm really looking forward to the further development of the hub and the future collaboration. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alessandra. I didn't ask before, is there any question from the room? To Alessandra specifically, no? Okay. So you mentioned at the very end of your presentation the one example of a future potential collaboration with specifically with the Health Hub. Do you want to say something more on this? Because it can be really some, let's say, inspirational for the thematic hub, for the Health Hub.
I think I have a few ideas, but it's always a question of feasibility and the willingness to engage, especially as I have some plans for some of the partners of the observatory. But I think what would be really useful, for example, would be to project into the future some of the indicators that have been developed by Lancet Countdown in Europe. So bringing in the climate data and where possible socioeconomic projections to see how the trends that we've been seeing in the past, how they might develop in the future. But it's very much at the idea stage at the moment. So it's just to plant some seeds at the moment. It's nothing more concrete. But that's just one example of how we can continue working together.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Alessandra. I hope that you can stay with us till the end of this meeting. So let's move to the next presentation. And some of the previous speakers already introduced the Lancet Countdown. So we have with us Kim van Dalen. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, and she's working as a research fellow at the Lancet Countdown, coordinating the Lancet Countdown Europe with Professor Lowe. Hello, good afternoon. Nice to see you here. And she is going to give a presentation on how environmental data can be integrated in some decision support tools for climate-sensitive infectious disease. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I want to start as well, reiterating a bit what my colleagues have been saying, but congratulating you on all the amazing work that you've been doing with the Health Hub. I'm going to share my screen now, so if you could let me know if it is visible. Can you see it? Is it? Ah, I see. Okay, great. So my name is Kim. I'm a research fellow for the Lancet Countdown in Europe, which has been briefly introduced already, and I'm here to present on behalf of Professor Rachel Lowe. So I recently joined the Barcelona Supercomputing Center as part of the Global Health Resilience Group in the Earth Science Department. And our team is a group of interdisciplinary scientists working at the interface of epidemiology, biology, mathematics, and data sciences. And we work alongside the Earth Systems Services Group with climate scientists, social scientists, and science communication experts to co-develop decision support tools to enhance preparedness and response to emerging infectious diseases in climate change hotspots. And we develop decision support tools at cascading space-time scales from global to local, tracking both historical changes, issuing seasonal predictions, and making projections into the future using a range of climate change and socioeconomic scenarios. So at the moment, our group is involved in a lot of different projects that focus on different countries and different vector-borne diseases around the world, which you can see here in this figure as well. So we focus on different projects in South America, but also in South Asia. And of course, our Lancet Countdown in Europe collaboration is focused on the whole of the European region. And overall, our goal is to transform Earth observations and climate forecasts into useful and actionable disease risk indicators that are able to support health decision makers implement timely interventions at the local level. So think about things as fogging and education campaigns that enable households to eliminate mosquito breeding sites from and around their homes and thereby preventing diseases. So in the rest of the presentation, I will introduce some of the projects in which we're integrating different climatic data, and then I will discuss the Lancet Countdown in Europe in a bit more detail. So in one of our new projects, ID Alert, which is funded by the EU, we are working within a new One Health climate risk management framework to integrate the concepts of risks as defined by the IPCC, considering hazard, exposure, and vulnerability within the One Health approach to zoonotic disease surveillance. Thereby, we track human, animal, and environmental health, particularly in the context of zoonosis, including things as West Nile virus, leishmaniasis, and leptospirosis. And within this project, we will combine empirical methods with expert assessments to co-create indicators, early warning systems, policy options, and evaluation of adaptation and mitigation strategies. And this process is defined by stakeholders' needs assessments, collective prioritization, inclusive decision-making, participatory research, and shared knowledge generation. We also combine our knowledge of building early warning systems in areas where mosquito-borne diseases are endemic, like Vietnam and Brazil, to develop a system to resist the establishment of dengue, Zika, and other mosquito-borne diseases within Barcelona. So Barcelona is one of the top 3 hotspots for dengue emergence within Europe, with around 300 imported cases reported each year. And we are working to combine mosquito surveillance data using citizen science and smart trap technology with Earth observation data and air travel data to measure the movement of people between Barcelona and areas of the globe that are experiencing outbreaks. In one of our other projects, we develop different digital infrastructure to streamline the way data can be fed into decision support models. So in this Wellcome Trust-funded project, we harmonize multiple data streams, including satellite images, strategically collected data from drones and weather sensors, and socioeconomic and disease surveillance data to build tailored toolkits for public health and humanitarian agencies that operate in climate change hotspots such as growing cities, small islands, highland areas, and Amazon rainforests. And then one of the other projects that I wanted to mention before moving to the Lancet Countdown is that we have another new project, which is called ID Extremes, in which we develop an infectious disease modeling tool within an existing open source framework for climate science to predict the probability of outbreaks using observed and observed and forecast hydrometeorological indicators. So this flexible design of this project allows different users in different settings to input observed and forecast hydrometeorological indicators, such as drought and flood indicators, and output the probability of outbreaks of a given climate-sensitive infectious disease, such as dengue, malaria, cholera, and this several months in advance. And we are really integrating this into existing frameworks that already exist here at the BSc, and working with different agencies such as MSF and the Red Cross. But as well as developing tools to build resilience against emerging infectious diseases, our team is also involved in a global collaboration called the Lancet Countdown. And this is a collaboration that works to ensure that health is at the center of how governments understand and respond to climate change. And this collaboration tracks both the impact of climate change on health, as well as action taken to adapt to and mitigate against climate change and health co-benefits that can come from that. So think, for example, about healthier diets, cleaner air, and more livable cities. And within this collaboration, we track different indicators over time, and these roughly fall within 5 different working groups, whereby the first one is focusing on climate change impacts, exposures, and vulnerabilities. The second one is focusing on adaptation planning and resilience for health. The third one is focusing on mitigation actions and health co-benefits. The fourth one, economics and finance. And the fifth one is focusing on politics and governments, meaning that we look at how different entities engage with climate change and health. And this collaboration has been expanded in recent years with the establishment of different regional centers. And one of these regional centers is the Lancet Countdown in Europe. And by the establishment of these centers, we're able to focus more specifically of the climate and health risks that are relevant for specific regions, as well as benefiting from data sources that may be more rich for a specific region at which we do not have global data available. And it's my great pleasure of being able to be the research fellow for this project and coordinate this together with Professor Lowe. So last year, we published our very first indicator report, which included a total of 33 different indicators that track different aspects of how climate change and health interact with each other. And this was generated by a total of 44 different research from 29 institutions across the different disciplines. So when I talk about indicators, I thought it is useful to briefly mention what I mean. So within the Lancet Countdown in Europe, our indicators are retrospective. So whereas in some of the other projects, we're focusing on early warning systems or projections into the future, all of our indicators currently are still retrospective. And of course, these indicators need to be meaningful. They track on aspects of climate change and health, and particularly focusing on the relationships between the two. They need to be relevant for policymakers, scientifically sound and reproducible, and temporarily representative. So most of our indicators provide annual data, so they go as far back in the past as that we can, to a date as recent in the future. So usually that means for our indicators that we start tracking from the 1950s and then go up to 2022, or we start tracking from 1980 or 2000, depending on the data availability. Of course, they also need to be geographically representative. So within the Lancet Countdown in Europe, we aim to cover all 53 different World Health Organization European countries. But of course, depending on the data availability, some of our indicators are able to focus on more or less countries. And of course, the data needs to be reliable and useful and updatable. So within the Lancet Countdown monitoring system, we use a lot of different global and European climate reanalysis products to track annual changes in a set of health-related outcomes. So in the monitoring systems, multiple variables from reanalysis datasets such as RF5 or RF5 Land are retrieved and processed to capture things as heat waves, precipitation extremes, wildfires, droughts, warming and ecosystem changes across Europe over multiple decades. And this reanalysis derived information is then input into different hazard exposure vulnerability frameworks, and that delivers as outcomes indicators that track on a year-to-year basis impacts of climate-related hazards on human mortality, labor capacity, something that was just mentioned by my colleague Alexandra, as well as things as physical activity, infectious disease transmission risks, and food security. So this is just to give an example of what kind of data all goes into our indicators. So I would like to present all the results of our different indicators, but then we are still sitting here tomorrow morning. So I thought I'd just present the overall summary figure of our report. So on the top of this figure, you see some of our climate-related health impact indicators, and at the bottom you see our climate change response indicators, which includes indicators that track different aspects of adaptation and mitigation. And we really see that there are alarming trends in terms of increasing health-related impacts from climate change across Europe. And despite that there is some progress towards coal phase-outs and shifts towards renewable energies, Europe's current emissions still remain excessively high, and this is costing millions of lives every year, not only within Europe, but also, of course, globally. And as my colleague Alexandra mentioned, we also contribute to the European Climate and Health Observatory. So at the moment, you can find 11 of our indicators that are available as interactive visualizations within a portal. So this really allows people to look at different indicators on a specific time points, but also for specific countries or sub-country regions. And with that, I would like to thank you all for listening, and feel free to email me or Rachel with any questions if you have any. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kim, for your very interesting presentation. A lot of points that are valuable for us and for let's say, be more engaged in the collaboration with the Lancet Countdown. A lot of very interesting and amazing use cases that you presented to us that can be, that can inspire our users as well to use the data and the products. Any questions from the audience? No? Okay. Thank you, Kim, again. So now we can pass to our last, no, it's not the last one, but the next speaker, Jan Semenza. Jan is a professor and a scientist working since many years in the field of infectious disease and in the link between climate change and environment. He is also a member of our advisory board, and he worked and collaborated to several international groups, like for example, Lancet Countdown Europe, as already presented before, and the WHO WMO Europe working group. Jan, are you with us? We can see you. Nice to see you here. And he is going to present us how drivers of infectious disease treat events in Europe.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me to speak here today. I would like to congratulate Vincent, Henri, and Julie, and all the collaborators to create this Copernicus Health Hub. So this is exactly what's needed in the field and very much appreciated by all the practitioners that do this type of work. I would like to illustrate some potential applications of those type of data and how they can be turned into public health action. And Kim spoke very nicely about the impact of climate change on a number of health outcomes. And climate change manifests itself with the different types of exposures like severe weather, extreme heat, air pollution, and so on. And as a result, we see different types of health impacts. And at the core of this slide here, you see a number of infectious diseases that seem to be impacted by climate change. But the question that we asked was whether this is true or not, whether climate does in fact have an impact on infectious diseases. And what are these epidemic events, if I call them infectious disease threat events in Europe, and what leads to them? Is it climate that contributes to them? Are there other societal factors? What are those underlying drivers of epidemic events or outbreaks? And is it potentially possible to monitor those type of drivers if in fact they contribute, in order then to predict potential outbreaks and emergencies? And I'm not saying that we're trying to predict the emergence of black swan events, as you can see here, which are these highly unlikely but highly catastrophic events such as COVID-19 or SARS or HIV. But maybe there are some other types of diseases that we can try to study and understand underlying drivers, so we can potentially intervene on those drivers to intercept. So the thing we did, we went to Greece and we consulted the Oracle in Delphi to get some insights of the potential drivers of these infectious diseases. But as you can see here, it was in a pretty bad shape when we arrived, and it was not highly functional. So we didn't resorted to the next best thing, which is basically a foresight study. And this is something that we did now several years ago, in 2008, in fact, when we convened a lot of experts to the table to ask them, what are those infectious disease threat events in Europe, and what are those underlying drivers of these events? And we corroborated that with the literature review, and we developed scenarios and came up with these plausible scenarios that could potentially precipitate, and then an action plan how to potentially cope with them. And we basically grouped the drivers into 3 different categories. The first one was global environmental change. The second one is social demographic change, and the next one is public health systems. And within those 3 categories, there are obviously subcategories. In the first one, we have climate change, but we also have travel and tourism, migration, and global trade. In the second category, we have social inequalities, lifestyle issues, and things like that. And then in the public health category, we have the surveillance and reporting breakdown, for example, that then leads to severe outcomes because we don't intervene appropriately. So once we combined these type of drivers and how they could potentially interact to cause epidemic events in Europe, we came up with a very complicated figure illustrated on this slide here, where on the left side, you have the drivers, again, the 3 categories that I mentioned earlier: globalization, environmental change, social demographic change, and public health systems. And then on the right, we have the different infectious disease outcomes and these scenarios, an outbreak of vector-borne diseases or drug-resistant bacteria, and so on. And so basically the obvious question is this true or not? Because as you remember, the Oracle didn't work, and these foresight experts might not be able to foresee the future appropriately either, and could potentially draw any scenario out of the hat. So we wanted to validate this. Is it possible to quantify this? Are there empirical data to quantify these type of scenarios? In order to do that, we went into a database that's collected at the European Centers for Disease Prevention and Control, an EU agency located in Stockholm in charge of infectious disease control in Europe. And what's done at ECDC is something that's called epidemic intelligence, where epidemic events are monitored throughout the world to see whether they're a potential threat to Europe. And that's exactly the database we needed. And here you can see how these people, these epidemiologists at ECDC, discuss these epidemic events at the Emergency Operations Center every day at 11:30 to see whether there's a potential threat for Europe. And all that data from this Emergency Operations Center is entered into the threat tracking tool, and all that information is then compiled, and we went into the database to identify every single underlying driver of every event that had happened within this time frame to see what the underlying contributing factors are to these epidemic events. And these are the type of events that we looked at. I call these, as I mentioned, infectious disease threat events. And you can see the vector-borne disease outbreaks like West Nile fever, malaria, but also hantavirus, also like Q fever and vaccine-preventable diseases, and so on. And when we looked at the drivers, we realized that drivers rarely act alone. They act in concert with other drivers. You can see that the majority of events had two drivers, but even 3, 4, 5, or 6. And so they rarely act in concert. And when we try to tease out this complex web between drivers and diseases, we came again to this very complicated, uninterpretable image, similar to what I had showed you before. So if we just take out vector-borne diseases out of this, it makes a little bit more sense. Here, for example, for vector-borne diseases, you can see the natural environment, the climate to contribute to these type of events besides some other ones. And when we ran a cluster dendrogram with a hierarchical cluster analysis, we saw that the most important driver of epidemic events in Europe is in fact travel and tourism. Global trade is important, food and water systems are important, surveillance systems, and climate. So climate comes in as in the top 5, but the most important driver of epidemic events in Europe is travel, because remember when we saw the introduction of SARS-CoV-2 into northern Italy and from China, and then how it rapidly dispersed throughout Europe. So we know how important travel and tourism is, in fact, for disease dispersion. But climate is an important factor too, and this is what we looked at, an outbreak of chikungunya that occurred in the southern part of France and in Rome and the southern part of Italy in 2017. And what we wanted to take into account here is, in fact, the contribution of air passenger volume. People that fly from chikungunya active areas into Europe. So chikungunya is a tropical disease that usually doesn't occur in Europe, but it can be imported by viremic individuals that were bitten by a mosquito, and then they bring that virus inadvertently back to Europe. And this is what we plotted out on this graph here, where we looked at the passenger volume of individuals that come from chikungunya active areas worldwide into Europe. And the yellow areas of this map are the areas where the Asian tiger mosquito, Aedes albopictus, is currently present, that can potentially transmit this particular viral disease from one individual to another. So you can see here that people in Rome need to be concerned, but also in Milan, in Barcelona, because the mosquitoes are present in those areas. And when we looked at the climatic suitability of potential onward transmission, we realized that the Mediterranean, where the mosquito is currently present, is at high risk, particularly during July and August. And when we then used Twitter data to analyze people that were in the Var district where that outbreak initially happened, we were able to see that people from this Var district here in some part of France moved to the other epicenter here in Rome, and basically potentially contributed to that outbreak. So by analyzing an individual that tweets in the epicenter of the epidemic, and then the next tweet comes from somewhere else, we can draw these vectors or unidirectional flow of ground transportation or short transportation of individuals that move from the epicenter of the epidemic somewhere else. And this is how we connected the epidemic in France with the epidemic in Italy. You can see here when we combined the climatic suitability and this mobility proxy or this Twitter connection of these locations, we can see that the Var district is in fact connected with Rome, and we're able to connect it to other locations as well. So the summary of this analysis is that climate is important when we looked at climate suitability, but also air passenger volume of the risk for importation of this type of tropical disease. Another example that I would like to illustrate is water quality and, again, climate, how those two contribute to the increased risk of infectious diseases. And it turns out that in the Baltic, in the area where I live right now, this is a saltwater lake with relatively low salinity. And when it gets warm in Scandinavia, a lot of people go to the sea, to the Baltic, where they are potentially at risk for exposure to Vibrio bacteria. And these Vibrio bacteria, like Vibrio multifidus or paramalyticus, they thrive in low salt water and thrive once the temperature, excuse me, the temperature increases. And so then they start propagated, and they can potentially lead to wound infections, gastroenteritis, or septicemia that can potentially be fatal. And in fact, people do die from these type of infections in Sweden and need to have amputations or intensive care. So we were interested in this type of situation because there is no monitoring of Vibrio on a global scale in Europe. There's no mandate. And so we basically set up a system where we monitored the sea surface temperature and salinity worldwide, but specifically now for the Baltic with remotely sensitive data, and created a tool that's called the Vibrio Map Viewer, where we were able to monitor the climatic suitability for Vibrio infections. And you can see here that the Baltic started lighting up in 2014. And so we knew that our tool picked up a signal for environmental and climatic suitability for these type of infections. And sure enough, looking at data from Sweden, which is one of the few countries that collect Vibrio infections, we did in fact see that that environmental signal corresponded to an epidemiologic signal with an increase in cases, illustrated here on the y-axis, the number of Vibrio cases picked up in Sweden. And in fact, it turns out that this trend of the warming of the Baltic is projected to increase under climate change scenarios. You can see here the sea surface temperature projected to go up over the years. So that's something that we have to reckon with in the coming years. Another example looks at climate and the natural environment. The example here is West Nile. Just to refresh your memory, this particular virus here circulates among indigenous mosquitoes, or mosquitoes that we have here in Europe. They're called Culex mosquitoes. And the virus gets introduced from a wild bird from elsewhere, and then the virus circulates among the birds because it's transmitted from one bird to another by a mosquito. However, it can also happen that there are bridge mosquitoes that bite both birds and humans, and then we humans tend to be dead-end hosts, where we suddenly get infected with this particular virus as well. We don't tend to spread it onwards unless through blood transfusions, but we are the dead-end host in this epidemiologic transmission cycle of the West Nile virus. And it turns out that the southern eastern part of Europe is particularly impacted by this particular virus, with this outbreak illustrated in this red NOTS 3 region, illustrated here on the map. And it turns out that 2018 was an exceptional year when it came to the magnitude of the outbreak, but also the early onset of the disease. And so we set up a system where we used data from the Copernicus climate services and used machine learning to set up an artificial intelligence system to identify the contributing drivers for that outbreak. And we saw that the mean temperature of the warmest quarter was the strongest predictor of these outbreaks, and temperature seasonality and the water index contributed as well, listed on the y-axis here. You see how the contribution to this outbreak. An interesting finding, however, was the fact that the maximum temperature in the spring was a strong contributor to the extreme outbreak year in 2018. So that's the light bar here that you see here, that's statistically significant from 2017, which was not an outbreak year. So we know now that the maximum temperature in the spring, but also the mean temperature in the spring, is an indication for West Nile fever outbreaks later on in the season. And now we can use this as an early warning system because we know that this spring is particularly hot. Now we can anticipate a big West Nile fever outbreak in the coming months, and we can prepare with appropriate measures. So both the Vibrio example and this example here are examples how these kind of systems can be operationalized. For example, for Vibrio, ECDC monitors the climatic suitability during the summer months, and then sends out alerts to the public. I'll go back here. Sorry. So these. Here we go. So once a signal is detected, then the ECDC goes out to the state epidemiologists, and they alert the state epidemiologists of beach closures that should be considered, and alerts to the public. So those are issues that can be taken into account now with these kind of early warning systems that are of concern, because if you look at the climate projections for West Nile, we see, particularly in Western Europe, an increased risk in the coming decades. You can see that Here, the Western Nile fever risk is going up quite dramatically compared to the current situation. And you can see the outbreak. This here is the current situation, and what we then will expect in the coming decades with an expansion of the yellow map, or the yellow area of the map, in the result of a warming due to climate change. So when we then go back and analyzed all the drivers from these actual events, the empirical data, compared to the plausible events that were predicted by our foresight experts, we can see that the actual events were much more, the contributing factors were climate change and global environmental change in general as a big contributor to these type of events, more so than what we had anticipated as part of the foresight study. So the experts did underestimate the contribution of climate and global environmental change to these type of epidemic events in Europe. And so in summary, global environmental change contributes to 61% of these type of events in Europe, where trade and tourism is the important driver. But we believe that monitoring these kind of climatic conditions allows us then to predict and intercept potential outbreaks and minimizing the public health consequences. If you have any questions, here is my emails. And again, this is also funded by ID Alert that Kim mentioned earlier.
Okay. Thanks. Really, thank you, Jan, for your presentation. I have a quick question for you. If you can you put him again on the? Okay, sorry. I have a quick question for you. I mean, your presentation was very interesting, inspiring also for, I mean, our development, let's say. How can you please spend a few words more on how you see this Copernicus Health Hub supporting you and, let's say, the communities that you represent in your studies as a tool for someone else to take maybe some kind of decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. And basically, these climate services are essential for public health action. We need to make sure in Europe that these climate services are available throughout the continent, that it's evenly distributed, because if the climate services are not available in marginalized or isolated groups, then you increase health inequalities in society. That's what we want to avoid. So these tools are great if these tools are evenly used throughout society, and by applying them comprehensively, we can have a big impact on public health. So these kind of climate services are essential for the type of work that we do, because the only thing that that can counteract these potential impacts are adaptation strategies, such as early warning systems or other options, because climate change is here already and it's here to stay.
Indeed. Okay, thank you, Jan. Thank you. So let's go to the last presenter, the last speaker today. She's Maria Loureiro. She's presenting from the European Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Authority, ERA, that is a new DG of the European Commission, and she's a policy officer at the Unit for Intelligence Gathering, Analysis and Innovation. Maria, is going to present us what they are doing in these new DGs and a specific action that can be interesting, let's say, for our health hub.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you and your presentation.
Perfect. So I start again by congratulating Julie and congratulating the colleagues for having this very, very nice initiative that will certainly be very important both for HEDA but also for other stakeholders in the future. I'm here to present a little bit about what HEDA does and how it can potentially relate with the work at the Health Hub and maybe some of other colleagues in the panel. so that maybe we can find some synergies here. So HEDA was created really out of need. It was created almost 2 years ago, 1.5 years, 2 years ago, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was created with the goal to strengthen Europe's ability to prevent, detect, and respond to cross-border health emergencies by ensuring the availability and access to medical countermeasures. So really the work of HEDA focuses on the whole value chain, not only of MCM development and production, but also the phases that come before. So intelligence gathering and analysis on health threats first, and then a selection of medical countermeasures that may be useful for these health threats, research, clinical trials, development, production, procurement, stockpiling and distribution of medical countermeasures. So as it's here written, and I really like this sentence, it's a cross-sector, multi-actor, and international collaboration that we do here at HEDA. There are many actions that we've had already in our very short life. I'm not going to go through...
Maria, sorry if I interrupt you, but it seems that your screen or your presentation is not... can you try to re-upload it or because there are a black band.
I think it's from Zoom. Yeah, if I go here.
Okay, fine. Now it's perfect.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. It was a little thing from Zoom. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to showcase everything that we have done so far. I really just wanted you to get a hint of what we are doing here. Most of our activities have to do with, again, medical countermeasures, aligning with member states also on what their priorities are, supporting them in increasing knowledge and skills about specific medical countermeasures, supporting research and development of novel countermeasures, clinical trials, negotiating the purchasing and the distribution of countermeasures, for example, for COVID-19, for monkeypox we had recently, and also establishing stockpiles, for example, for CBRN countermeasures. I'm going to focus now a little bit more on some of the actions that may be more relevant for you. Starting with our threat prioritization exercise. In 2022, we started by identifying 3 serious cross-border health threats, or more of areas that represent a threat, for example, antimicrobial resistance, CBRN, and agents with pandemic potential. And these serve as a guide for our monitoring, research, development activities. So for this set of priorities for HEDA in all of our activities. These threat categories were established using publicly available data, and they were defined based on different categories. So the severity of the impact of the particular threat to human health, the risk of spreading in the community, the availability of either countermeasures for treatment, but also for prophylaxis, for example. And also these are aligned with the priorities of member states that are consulted throughout the project, as well as Commission agencies and other international partners. More recently, we have identified also what we are calling health threat topics, so areas that may influence the health threats that we have identified, and the ones that we have now are environmental threats and biosecurity and emergency technologies. When we're talking about environmental threats for HEDA, and in this context, we're looking mainly at the spread of infectious diseases, so waterborne and vector-borne diseases. We're interested also in disease vectors, marine biotoxins, permafrost thawing, and everything that comes with it. So these are the types of environmental threats that we take into account. And all of this also, it's supported by this exercise of threat prioritization is also supported by the action that we have in the EU for Health 2023 program on a study on the identification of high impact threats to health, and then the periodic updates of these threats to guide the development and manufacture of medical countermeasures. Another action that we have, and this one is closer to my heart because it's one of the main things that I'm working on, it's the development of Athena. Athena is the advanced technology for health intelligence and action, and it's an IT system for health. This project right now is divided in 3 main goals, and as we have recently launched the call for tenders for this project, each goal is actually a lot in the call for tenders. So the first one, we're going to start with the development of the backbone of this platform. So really developing and launching the first modules of the platform that will have to do with the survey module, the case management module for public health and medical countermeasures. Then a second lot will be doing a more formal analysis of business needs and functional, non-functional requirements for other modules that have to do with the module that will be linking with the platforms of our stakeholders, threat assessment modules, simulation and analytics capabilities, and also with the emergency response modules. And then while Athena is being developed and further assessed, we're also going to have a module to collect and analyze commercial information, so really analytics as managed services, so that we can also have some intelligence gathering and threat assessment from commercial sources while Athena is not 100% functional. And here, just on the data sources that Athena will be using, the main input for our threat assessment will be using the information kindly provided by the colleagues at ECDC, so from TESI, EPIPOS, etc., and obviously the information that is already regularly shared with us on the daily notifications, and completed by some contextual information that we also receive from other sources. This contextual information includes data on demographics, mobility, geography, weather conditions, social factors, etc. And all of this obviously can influence the impact of a health threat, but also the response that we prepare to a health threat. On environmental threats, Athena will also be gathering intelligence on climate-related factors that favor or not the spread of a particular priority threat. Finally, also still on environmental surveillance, I wanted to just tell you briefly about the actions that we have on wastewater surveillance. Just here bringing you 2 topics. One of them has to do with increasing the surveillance capacities at national and at EU level for pandemic and preparedness and for the control of infectious diseases. So the goal is to integrate wastewater surveillance in other surveillance systems and focusing on also dispersing these results of the wastewater surveillance at EU level. And the establishment of a Sentinel system, our goal is really to increase the sampling of wastewaters that already exists at super sites, and then also enlarge the number of super sites and collect samples that will be tested at the request of the Commission. This is what I had to present. I wanted to be brief, but if I have any more questions about what we do at HERA and what could be some pathways for collaboration, if you have data that could be of interest for these actions, I'm very happy if you write to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for your presentation. Very interesting to know this new, let's say, reality at the European Commission. May I ask you to spend a few words, let's say, on explaining us how you see, again, how our Copernicus Health Hub supporting you in your ongoing action, and Athena is a reference, or on some future plan that you already have?
I think that especially from what I was learning about what the hub will be, I think it can really be an asset in attaining the contextual information that we need for also our threat assessment exercise. So what I was show you now in terms of environmental climate information, but also some information that may have to do with migrations, for example, that I'm sure that you will also be at ease to provide. So these types of information for the assessment of threats, but also for the coordination and preparation of a response to a threat, I think are going to be absolutely essential. Obviously, now that HERA has introduced also environmental threats as one of the topics that we are looking at. Here, obviously, the pathways for collaboration are absolutely obvious. But I think all of this will be further developed and further aligned in the coming months with the exercises that we're doing at the team. Because obviously now we have launched the call. The call will be closed in 2 weeks, so we still have 2 weeks to apply. Someone in the audience wants to present an offer. But I think as soon as Athena is tipped off, one of our priorities is to really go to the stakeholders, see what data is available and what data could be accessible to HERA, and really try to see what information we can draw from this data to the assessment exercises that we are conducting. And I think here the hub will be absolutely critical in our activities. So I see a lot of pathways for collaboration.
Okay, thank you, Maria, again. Thank you. And with Maria, we are going to finish this, the first part of the launch of this event. We are going to free you before the time that is reported on the agenda, but if you have 5 minutes, maybe you can have a look on the new website that Julie presented before, and maybe you can give us some feedback, let's say quick feedback just after the launch of the website. See you here again at 4 o'clock. We are going to discuss with the entrusted entities that supported us for the creation of the Health Hub, the different services that provide us their input, products, but not only, because the use cases are also another important element that are part of our Health Hub. So enjoy this free time, let's say, and see you here at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you very much. So thank you very much, everybody, to come back for the second part of the Copernicus Health Hub launch. So today we quite are lucky. We have representative of the services here with us. So we have Usue from the land service at EEA. We have Alexandre Arnal coming from the security service. Mr. Push coming from CAMS. Joaquin, who is coming from the climate change service. Catalin, who is from another security part of the services. Online, we have Muriel Lux from Mercator Océan. And we have, not last but least, two representatives of GRC, Simone Balbo and Peter Salamon. So all these persons are here today to explain us how the different services can contribute to the Health Hub and how their data can be beneficial for the health community. So I propose we start with Usue. So let's put the slides on. Oh yeah, maybe I need to do. So, Usue, can you tell us a little bit more about how the land monitoring service for the European component can help the health community?
Yeah. Hello, thank you very much for having me. I will unfortunately need to leave a little bit earlier, so I asked them to start with me. Thank you, Julie. And congratulations for the launch, by the way. So there are two aspects on how we contribute or how we plan to contribute also as well in the future, how we plan to collaborate. First is to maintain the operationality of the products that we already highlighted when we were asked on the contribution for the thematic health. For the health thematic hub, we have some of our products are quite long-running. They have a story. They have been updated several times, and I think that's one of the things that should be highlighted. So our operationality, our consistency, and the repeated effort that we do to produce some of our products. That's on one hand. On the other hand, we also have, as Alexandra was before presenting, we have the pleasure or the luxury to have at the EEA some of our stakeholders, and that gives us the opportunity to have a direct conversation with them, to monitor the user requirements, to see how can we better evolve in our products, and also to see. Not only to listen to them on their requirements and to listen on their needs, and I think that's also important.
Thank you very much, Usue. Can you tell us also a little bit more about the future developments that can be beneficial again and the foreseen that can go ahead for the health community?
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things that we are now working on is on a workshop on health and place. This is only an example. So apart from the evolution on our products, we are now working together with the European Topic Center on looking at how our products can better serve the purpose of contributing to a better health. So in this sense, we are organizing together with our colleagues at the agency a workshop on the health and place, this is to say, on the importance of the place in the health of society. And this is meant to be the kickoff for a process to analyze all our portfolio, to gather new user requirements, and see how can we serve better the purpose. That's only an example. We are also going to work on, we are also going to start contributing with the zero pollution initiative. Also in June, in next week, we will have a kickoff workshop on that. So what I want to say with this, what we are doing is have this continuous conversation with our in-house stakeholders. I think that Copernicus is seen more and more as mandatory for not only for policies, but is seen as a very valuable input data. as well. And of course, the EA has a long story of collaboration with the CMWF, and now what we are looking at is also on synergies on how to combine the products, and that is also what lies at the heart of the thematic hubs.
Thank you very much, Josué. Thank you very much for all the explanation and all the contribution you've already done. Let's move to our next speaker, so Vincent Ripoche. Can you, I will ask you the same question, how the atmospheric monitoring service can help the health community?
Yes, atmospheric composition is maybe more important than you would think. And a figure that I often mention is that if on a daily basis an individual eats 1 kilogram of food, drinks 2 kilograms of water, we breathe 14 kilograms of air. So it really means that we process a lot of air, and the quality of air is something which is extremely important. So it's at the core of CAMS, of course, to cover air quality. And even if there is a good news that not so many people realize that air quality is improving a lot, so it has improved a lot in Europe in particular, thanks to more and more aggressive legislation. The problem is that more and more we realize that air pollutants at a lower level than previously expected do affect health. So now there are questions about health affecting dementia and things like this. So in CAMS we have quite a long history of working with the health sector, with air quality, and trying to respond to the needs. So the needs for air quality that have been expressed and that we are gradually covering is long-term data sets. So we have now 10 years of reanalysis of regional air quality in Europe, which allows the epidemiologists to look at long-term exposure. The dream would be to have a whole life exposure, because the first months in the life are probably among the most important. But we are trying to respond to that. So air quality is a big portfolio. Pollen is a very good example, and in your presentation you showed one example of an application using CAMS pollen to forecast allergy outputs, and that's where really the handshaking with the medical community is very important. So in CAMS, our business is to observe air pollution, but we are not medical doctors. And that's where the Health Hub can help to make access to our data easier. And when we look at the COVID, actually, in this dramatic situation, there was a benefit that lots of people started looking at air quality data to look at it as a possible driver also in the pandemic. And the last example I will give is UV radiations, and you mentioned this, the good and the bad of UV. The bad is rightly well advertised because excess exposure to UV is causing too many skin cancer in particular. But there is a good as well, and for some European countries, lack of exposure to UV is also a health concern. So knowing the dose that you may have on a daily basis is something really useful. So I think very glad to contribute to the Health Hub. Very glad also, as Josué was saying, that it is possible to combine data sets from different services. And it's really I think we will be really successful with this launch when we will have some users taking up data from one service showing at connection between ports for transport of diseases, as was shown nicely by Jan Semenza, looking at correlating from different services. I think that will be a real success.
Thank you very much. So you already mentioned the will to have lifelong data. Is it any other subject you want to see in the future, and do you think it will be beneficial?
So we have requests which we have not yet answered in the area of certain specific pollutants, which we are covering, I would say, traditional regulatory pollutants, ozone, particulate matter, etc. There are other pollutants, unfortunately, that affect health. And working with the health community, we will see what is possible to do through the use of very limited number of observation, but maybe modeling as well, to cover also other pollutants that affect health and well-being.
Thank you very much. So now I will move online with Muriel. Muriel Lux from the Mercator Ocean. And I would like to know, Muriel, if you can hear me, if you can tell me a little bit more about how Mercator can contribute to the Health Hub.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so sorry not to be here with you today as it was planned. First of all, I would like to say that these thematic hubs are of great importance, I guess, not only to improve the user uptake of the Copernicus information, but also to synergize more and more between services. And we have appreciated all the exchange we have had with all of you. Regarding the Copernicus Marine Service, what we can provide for relevant information for health, it's true that even if life started in the ocean, when we think of human health, we first think of air quality, climate change, urban development, pollution, water reservoir. But within the last decade, the ocean has been more and more highlighted as a major player for human health. Since about 50% of the global population live at less than 100 kilometers from the coast. And this is going to increase in the next decades. So the ocean is an essential source of food and economic development. It is also a widely preferred destination for tourism and a huge water resource. The ocean coasts are also particularly concerned by the sea level rise and the natural hazards. And it impacts then several aspects of the human health. The Copernicus Marine Service, as it is shown here, provide many information on many parameters dealing with ocean climate, ocean state, seawater quality, temperature, salinity, different parameters impacting ocean health, and then human health, fish abundance, and so on. And all these products are provided as multi-year data or forecasting data that could be useful. Moreover, we can provide to our users and partners efficient tools to explore, map, and share the ocean information. So what I think is that we are living in a big system whose components are all linked. And I think these thematic hubs could make the link, the bridges between all this information that are very dispersed everywhere. So, and regarding health, it's also true. We have many information regarding the ocean health that are completely linked to human health.
Thank you very much, Muriel. Coming really more specifically on the subject of health, how do you see Mercator progress in the future, or the Marine Service going through the health community?
Okay, so the Copernicus Marine Service is continuously evolving to provide more information, more accurate data regarding the ocean. We are user-driven. We have many many workshops to collect the needs. We have many discussions with you as well. We are involved in several European projects to improve our knowledge product. We are also involved with the Regional Sea Convention that are responsible for the implementation of directives. So most of these directives are linked to the human health as well. And all this information we can provide will be improved in the next years with this ongoing project, especially regarding the sea level rise and the biodiversity-related parameters it can provide. We are going to evolve a lot during the 2 and 3 years.
Thank you very much, Muriel. Stay online because you might have some question at the end, but I will stay online still because I'm going now to Simone Balbo from GRC, who will talk about the land monitoring service, but at global scale. So if we can go back to have the slide, please. Yes, so here is a slide relating to this service. So please, Simone, tell us a little bit more about how your service can contribute to the health community.
Hello, good afternoon, Julie, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks for bringing all of us together. Sorry for not having the possibility to join you because the event I followed a bit online is very interesting, but also the venue is very nice. So I'm a bit jealous, honestly. Now coming to the question, how could we contribute? I mean, this was a very challenging question to us, to me at least, because I joined quite recently the service starting from 1 year. So to my knowledge, there was not a relevant group of users in the health sectors. So I started a few months ago looking a bit around to see, to get to know more of the usage of global and service data in the health sector. And luckily I work in the JRC, so there are many research groups around here, including groups working in the health sector. So I started to having a bit of conversation with these groups, and I understood that indeed Earth observation data are really key especially in models, and in calibrating and running models to understand health issues. And so I understood from this group that our data could be helpful in several sectors, especially in the environmental health issues such as air pollution, heat waves, distribution of pollens, and UV radiations. But also, which is very interesting to me, and I also follow with attention the contribution from Jan Semenza before, is the field of infection, and especially of drivers such as mosquitoes, and how they spread in the geospatial field. So by analyzing some of the works of this research group, we come up with we filtered out our portfolio, and we understood that we could provide very relevant input data to these models that take into account, for example, the water content, so the surface water, but as well as the water quality. We can provide relevant information related to temperature, both of the land and of the lake, the inland waters. And then also we can provide information, which is our core information related to the land cover, and also to the status of the vegetation, such as, for instance, the very well-known indicator NDVI. And also very relevant also is the content of water in the soil, so the surface soil moisture, for example, which is very relevant also to understand how, I mean, to calibrate also epidemiological models for understanding the vectors of infection diseases. All that is, these models can be run globally because we have a global extent. We can provide time series with several years of length, and we continuously monitor these biogeophysical parameters, giving also continuity for the future.
Thank you very much, Simone. Really interesting to hear, and really interesting to see that actually the Health Hub is going in two ways, so making you also yourself thinking about how your projects can be beneficial, and it's really nice to see that you're reaching out to the community. Now, because you have started to reach this community, can you tell us a little bit more on how you will move forward and give more to this specific community?
Yes, yeah. I was saying that I reached out to some of this group informally, and I understood that some of these groups may not have the budget to hire Earth observation professionals in their team. or they may not have the budget to invest in consultancies in Earth observation. This means that there might be a gap, a gap in terms of knowledge between the offer and the needs and the demand. And this is where we can do a step forward in the global land service, for instance, because our users traditionally are experts. So what we could do is to improve, to make step forward to allow also non-expert users to take advantage of our data, for example, by improving our technical documentation with more examples, by providing capacity building, webinars, and also maybe providing more visualization tools and applications. Also, I understood that these models, that are run by these colleagues, can be very demanding in terms of geoprocessing and in terms of also data size, and here maybe it's a bit dreaming, a bit forward is. What would be also interesting is to offer the possibility to this group to upload their data to a hub or to for example, the CDSC that was mentioned before, in a way to allow also this community of users to run their models on our systems, and to provide also and us to provide also tools for simplifying the life of these users.
Thank you very much, Simone. It's really interesting to hear, and I'm glad that we all reaching the same conclusions, that sometimes we are too specialized and we really need to adapt ourselves to go to this community that is not expert in environment. So thank you, Simone. Same mission to you than for Muriel. Please stay online because we might have questions at the end. So I will move forward now to Kathleen, who is just next to me. So same punishment than everybody else. Can you tell a little bit more about Frontex and how we can help the health community?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for inviting also Frontex here. Frontex is an entrusted entity with the border surveillance component of the Copernicus security services. We have currently 17 products, services, delivered in the framework of the Copernicus program. Out of these 17 services, 2 of them currently suitable for providing data in the context that you can see in the slides. That covers camps, shelters, congestion of people. You can see the content. Those 2 services is the pre-frontier monitoring, that is a detailed imagery analysis of specific areas, and another service is the reference mapping, which is very detailed geodata of a given area based on risk analysis. The products that we could contribute, mostly data, and it can be collected on demand. And the main groups are the critical infrastructure analysis, so it can have this, the camp analysis, for example, the location of camps, the displaced persons, the sanitary facilities in these camps, then the road network and the road conditions, if it's dangerous, there are obstacles, the traffic monitoring, if it depends on the congestion of people or vehicles or obstacles, waiting time there, and we can provide ad hoc reports for the situational pictures.
Great. It's good to hear all of that. It's amazing to see how we can contribute to the Health Hub. Can you see now a way forward? What would you like to bring in the future?
Yes, actually, under the new contribution agreement for Copernicus, or current products, current services will be changed to 16 products, including a dynamic and interactive map product. And this platform could form a very dynamic content management, and again on demand. So we could upload the new data, serving our stakeholders with this data. Another possibility that Frontex can provide is in harmony with the member states, as the disease control, the prevention, and the monitoring of epidemic situation is always according to the protocol of the member states. Frontex could harmonize this data and provide help for monitoring, awareness, and prediction in this context. Maybe the third main activity that Frontex could provide is an in-house study, but in this we would rely very much on other services, which is the climate change service and the disaster monitoring and emergency management service. This would cover the heat and the cold stress, the extreme weather conditions, the heat waves, and the natural and the man-made disasters, floods, droughts, water pollution, air pollution, and also factors that contribute to the food insecurity that would trigger more migration flow.
That's amazing. It's good to see that you're already thinking of collaboration with other services, doing a little bit of job.
We would also use more from the European flood awareness system, the European forest fire information system, and the European drought observatory. Yeah. So it's really a good cooperation with many services and institutes.
That is perfect. Is really what I like to hear. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I will continue with another service. I will go to Alexandre Arnal, so staying on security, but from SATSEN. So Alexandre, same question as everybody. How can you contribute?
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. You know that the Security SCA service plays a crucial role in the European Union effort to promote stability and security. We have a couple of key features that make us a little bit of different, right? We provide geospatial intelligence products and services to a group of authorized users, and these include, the External Action Service, European Commission, member states, and international organizations such as the UN. And we support them in different levels of activity, from more strategic, operational, into functional. In the frame of the health security, what we call it like that, I think we can bring some of our capabilities when there is an intersection between the public health and the security domain, right? In this regard, what we can bring is enhanced, detailed versus regional situational awareness, as well as to provide adequate response planning. The use cases you see on the screen, please take, they are not exhaustive because, as I said before, we are an on-demand service and we are able to tailor our solutions to the user needs, okay? But a couple of examples I would like to present, first of all, is the monitoring and status and progress of construction works, and this happened, with the emergency hospitals. You will remember back in 2020 in Wuhan, China, using, very detailed Earth observation data plus collateral information. It was possible to monitor the status and progress. Then it became, viral, not because of us, but Max are involved in there and so on. Another nice example, and pretty much in line with our colleague in Frontex, with a different context, of course, is the road network status assessment. I think it's important to understand that, networks abroad, they are very important to move assets, and it could be very well related with the key elements. They are key elements to ensure emergency and support and medical care. So what we are aiming to do is to support the planning and crisis response by analyzing accessibility and providing alternative routes for the people deploying GOTS and personnel on the ground. So that's it. I mean.
Thank you very much, Alexandre. I mean, obviously, humanitarian way to go as a kind of something obvious. So what are the next steps, please?
Well, you all know that we are still in the progress of signing the new contribution agreement. Although this, I mean, we are always trying to evolve the service and constantly gathering requirements from the different users. There are different areas of application that we are focusing, and some of them are, you know, environmental compliance, climate security, as well as, you know, health. A couple of examples that we have in mind, but I mean, it needs further refinement and further evolution is the impact and risk analysis of pollutant, and this is clearly linked to the EU concept for environmental protection and energy optimization that published the External Action Service back in 2021. In this paper, it was important that it's mandatory to analyze and identify the environmental footprint of all missions and operations deployed on the ground. So I think directly, indirectly, this is related to health. Examples of things that we are interested in, you know, water, air quality, state of soil. So for this, we have identified some some sources that may be of our interest, but we always find the same issue. And an example could be the Sentinel-5P methane or other CAMS products. I mean, there is a gap between the level of analysis we are looking for. Sometimes it's very detailed with the available information that could be ingested within our analysis. So I think this is a perfect forum to find synergies between the different services. Another example that was mentioned before is the mapping the illness transmission risk, and this could be very well applied also abroad, and it may have impacts also in missions and operations. So I think it's also interesting for us, and thanks again for putting within this loop that I think it could bring very good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandre. It's really good to hear, and we are so much looking forward for hearing even more in the future. So I will move to a second speaker from ECMWF, working on the climate change service. Joaquin, can you tell me a little bit more about how we can contribute to health?
Well, thank you, Julie. So from the Copernicus Climate Change Service, first of all, we really welcome this initiative very much. And we think it's going to be a great contributor, not only to raise awareness about growing health risks related to climate change, but also as a really supporting for everything which is adaptation, platform adaptation, but also future policy. So specifically for the contribution of C3S, we do have a lot of data set that we make available, and they are relevant for this hub. But even more relevant, I think, for this hub is that we have developed what we public applications. The main objective is to really address specific needs of specific economical sectors, such as the health sector. And let me put you simply a couple of examples, which I think is showcase very well their utility, and it has already been mentioned before. So the first example would be, or is try to address the topic of the heat stress. So we know how temperature is really affecting all our life every day. You know, for instance, by conducting really outdoor activities in extreme heat conditions, we know that really is a serious health risk. Last year, just here in Spain, it was the hottest summer on record. And there was here in Spain, but not only in Spain, but in Spain, we had an excess of mortality that was recorded, and that was attributed directly to this the heat wave that we had during the summer. So in this application, what we are doing, we are just trying to cross these two types of information. From one side, the number of heat wave days. On the other hand, we also do it the excess of mortality for different European cities. So a health user, you can simply play with this data, look at historical data, how this has evolved, number of heat waves with really excess of mortality, but even probably more importantly or more relevant, it will be looking at the future, how this is looking under climate projections. But not only about climate projections, but also about different scenarios, socio-economical scenarios. For instance, one of them would be a positive one, where local legislators have already implemented measure of adaptation, which is probably in a scenario where this negative impact is probably mitigated. A second example, very quick, would be about the expansion of vector-borne diseases. In this case, to showcase this, we chose the example of the tiger mosquito. So tiger mosquito is a mosquito that really transmits vector-borne diseases such as the dengue. And even if it's native to tropical and subtropical areas of Southeast Asia, I think it was introduced in Europe in the 70s. But under the current climate conditions, the climate conditions are very favorable for the expansions for their expansion in Europe, and of course that is for many people a really serious health risk. So this app again, what it's trying to do is to showcase this, letting the health user to play with the data, to look at historical data for European countries and see how in the future the chances of this mosquito to survive is, but also looking also what is the season for what this mosquito it will be active. So these are just a couple of examples. There are many others, and I think they are in this slide. But really showcase or it really put into context how can we really use this data to put into context and be useful for people in the health sector.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. So we have talked about its island effect. We have talked about mosquitoes. Any way forward?
Yeah, looking ahead, one very important development we are going through now at the moment is trying to do the full restructuring of our climate data store. So now we are working a lot on that. And I think that's one of the points which will be relevant is that they will allow intermediate users or will have more flexibility to really build their own workflows and produce the same type of application that I've been talking about, but for many other users that require have a specific need on the health sector. Another important development also related to the climate data store is that we are also merging it with the atmospheric data store. So, and now they both are merging into what we already call the CATS. And this is very important because it's very relevant because it means that it's going to be much easier to collect or to retrieve data which is relevant for the health sector, but also in a very harmonized way. So I think it's a very nice development. And probably last but not least, I would say that we continue collect requirements from our users. All these requirements, they're still stored in a user requirement database that we analyze frequently. And they are really a driving factor of future updates of the Copernicus of the climate change service. So many of these applications are already a response to some of these requirements. So I think these are all good things that are looking ahead.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. So another collaboration on between two services I can see. I have here it a lot today, and I think we're really going for this way forward. Last but not least, online we have Peter Salamon from GRC who will talk to us about the emergency management service and the way it can contribute to health. Peter, if you can speak now.
Yes, thanks Julie, and good afternoon to everybody. Apologies also from my side that I can't be with you, and believe me, I know how beautiful Valencia is. It has been my hometown for quite a few years, but nevertheless, unfortunately, I couldn't make it. Now, let me show you a little bit how we see the products of the Copernicus Emergency Management Service contributing to the Health Hub. And I mean, on first sight, actually, you clearly, I mean, our products, if you think about disasters, I mean, they, of course, disasters impact the life of the people. but probably mostly and first and foremost on the well-being rather than directly on health. But if you look a little bit in more detail, we do have quite a number of products that can be used in particular in combination with products also coming from the other Copernicus services. And here again, I think I stress the importance of the synergies between the services and that also the Health Hub builds on is quite relevant. So, for example, we have in our on-demand mapping component, which is a component which is capable of mapping in fast mode any kind of disaster all around the world. We have had activations in relation to supporting health incidents or in the area of health. We have been monitoring, for example, the mobile health facilities in Italy during the COVID pandemic a couple of years ago. We have had various activations on monitoring the industrial accidents, and it's clear, I think, in an industrial accident, depending on the substance release into the water or into the air, this can represent a significant impact on human health in particular in the immediate surroundings of the disaster. So then we have, also in the early warning and monitoring component, which Katalin already mentioned some of the tools beforehand. In particular, we have, of course, when it comes to heat waves, to droughts, and we have in the European and Global Drought Observatory, we look also at heat waves, and this has, of course, as you all know, a significant impact also on human health. So there are these products available that are updated regularly. From the flood point of view, for example, you are well aware that long-lasting floods can cause problems with regards to drinking water contamination or the proliferation of certain diseases. So also here, information on this type of disaster may be useful in the health community. Last but not least, we have also, and that's a relatively new component. We call it the exposure mapping component, and it provides information on population and built-up surface. And of course, this is highly relevant also not only for measuring the impacts of disasters, but also when it comes to health topics. I mean, as you can imagine, it's quite important to be able to classify green or sealed areas, to be able to classify urban and rural areas, because that's typically where you then have issues like increased atmospheric pollution in dense, when you have a strong urban growth, or you can combine the information, as was said already before, combining information from the climate change service together with population density to identify urban heat islands, etc. So there's quite a number of use cases, I think, that we have as well in the emergency management service, and that we can share and provide to the users in the health sector.
Thank you very much, Peter. So you already mentioned a new product. Tell us more. What is coming next, please?
Well, I mean, for us, clearly, I mean, we continuously evolve all the products that we have, like in all the other Copernicus services. I mean, we work on improving all the indicators that we have in our early warning and monitoring systems. We will, in this new product of the exposure mapping, this will be regularly updated every 2 years. We'll have an update on the population density and built-up surface. But I think for us, now with this health hub, it's more for us now in the coming year to listen to this new user community. I mean, our products are very much civil protection focused, because clearly we are working. These are our key stakeholders and key users. We design products for them, but so the health community, the health sector, is not really something we have been frequently in contact with. So I think for us, it will be now listening to user feedback from that sector, and then depending on that, seeing what feedback we get, maybe together, probably together with the other Copernicus services, then try and see if we can meet those user requirements with the development of new products also in the emergency management service.
Thank you very much, Peter. So a word I kind of hear a lot is user requirement and collaboration on between the service. So it was quite consistent on between all of you. So I would like to thank you. And before I let you go back, is it any question from the audience? Leonor, so Max is coming to you.
Yes, thank you very much. First, congratulations. I think it's really nice to see all of you here. Just by putting all the Copernicus services together, I think this is a success. And when I've been listening to your discussion today and the presentations, I sit with two questions, and it's not exactly to any of you, but to all of you. So I'm not sure how you are going to answer. The first question is, do you aim at a common infrastructure? Do you aim at having a common ADS? Is there an idea of putting all together in the same place? Or is this a distributed infrastructure where we will get the different ones? So I want to know, how are you thinking about this infrastructure? Where is the data going to be? Is that a common database? Is that a common service? Or is just a common portal? I would like to know that. The other question is very much about the fact that you have this idea of putting a showcase of use cases. It's a very good part to begin with. But what I see also is that all the services have very much the same ones. And it repeats from one to the other. And what's very interesting is that there's a different endpoint in most of the services. So is there going to be simply a showcase of what we have now, or are you going to have some efforts of really combining the indicators and combining the endpoints? And how is this going to work? So those are my two questions.
Vincent, you want to reply?
Yes, it's two very good questions. I'll try to answer the first one on the infrastructure. I think a key word is interoperability, because in the end, they may be different portals. The question is whether they can talk together very efficiently. Just at the coffee break, we were discussing about ChatGPT, which is what everybody is discussing at the same time. So I think it will probably change, or a version of it may change the way we interact with data. What's very important and what's behind what was initially the climate data store, the atmosphere data store, but other data stores that we see for most of the services is this concept of interoperability becoming more and more important. We have Wikio as a resource. There is also the Copernicus data space ecosystem. We need to remember that Copernicus is a user-driven program, so have the user in view. To what extent the interoperability of different activities is enough to have this integrated platform? Joaquin mentioned the CIDS, which is already bringing C3S and CAMS together. Maybe there will be also other consolidation. I don't know exactly where we will be in 2 or 3 years, but what I know is if we are serious with the implementation of interoperability, it will not matter much. So we may have different platforms, but the user will find the data, and the data will reside actually where it is located.
Someone has to intervene?
Yes.
Yes, please, Muriel, go ahead.
Yes, well, thank you for the question. I am sure that, yes, this question of multiple portals can be asked, but I think that there is some specificity of each service that justify that they exist as they are. But Vincent-Henri was mentioning the Wikio portal. Effectively, the Wikio portal is a partnership between EUMETSAT, Mercator, and ECMWF to give access to all the Copernicus data in a single portal. So maybe this portal can meet your expectation. I would invite you to visit Wikio. So.
Thank you very much, Muriel. So someone want to go on the second question on the use cases, or should I take it?
I can maybe say something on that.
Yeah, please, Peter, go ahead.
Yes, I think in fact, I mean, the first question I think was already well answered, in particular by the comment by Vincent. So, but the second one is indeed, it's true that in the user stories of the different Copernicus services, you will find similar user stories about similar in relation to similar health aspects. But I mean, you should also be aware that this is we are launching today the Health Hub. So this is a start for us. I mean, there are Copernicus services, in particular, I would say maybe the Atmospheric Monitoring Service, which had a longer history on working on health topics. But most certainly for us, the Emergency Management Service, it was clearly over the past years we had key users more on the civil protection side. So to explore now the synergies in relation to not only the Health Hub but also the other hubs that are being built has just started, and definitely I think over time you will see a convergence of the different user stories when we bring the different products from the different Copernicus services better together and create better and more streamlined products for the health sector and for the other sectors that we aim at with the other Copernicus thematic hubs.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your answer. Is it anybody else who want to contribute to this? Oh, yes, please, Katalin.
Maybe Frontex as a mandate, Frontex focus on mostly the irregular migration and the cross-border crime. Probably could collect data from this mobile, unexpected human factor that is not only the environmental background, but also something that is not obvious coming. But all these conditions and the framework should be investigated if it's relevant.
Oh, thank you very much, Katalin, for that. It's really interesting to hear. Any other comment from the... Yes, please, Alexandre.
I think regarding your second question, I think it's important also to notice that there are different cooperation mechanisms between the different entrusted entities. And a clear example is, between emergency on-demand service and between, the security SCA service. And I think this happens also, with Frontex and with other services. So I think, yeah, it could look similar, but sometimes, the context or the user are different. But yeah, I think the important thing is that there exists a coordination behind.
Thank you very much. Any other question from the audience? No, I don't think so. So I would like to thank you. Oh, sorry, I haven't seen you. Sorry, so Stein, please.
I decided last minute. And it's more an additional element. The next step which we will now take with the hubs is also to connect the what, so all these portfolios of data products which you see, with the different user personas, the different user communities which are needing them, and why they need this, what drives them to use this data. And then you will see connectivities. Then you see how information flows to the different users and how it reaches them. And then you can see interesting trends and interesting ways on how we can also improve with our technical knowledge, with our data access and all these type of things to reach these user communities. So we're starting with the hub today, with the health one. But it's something which we really need to take into account, and probably also Mercator-Océan will do the same for the coastal one and the Arctic. So it's something which comes as second layer to make this connectivity, because that's very interesting, and this will make it special also.
Thank you very much, Sten. I think it's a nice way to conclude this panel of discussion. I would like to thank all our speakers, and I have a round of applause for them. Thank you all. I will leave you, and we will have some final remarks from the coordinator, Cristina Nanasso. You can go.
Okay, so I think that I'm very happy to close this this meeting today, this session. It was very interesting, and so now I can say that the Copernicus Health Hub is becoming real. As mentioned this morning by Maria, we translated 10 lines reported in the EC CMWF agreement into something concrete. And now we can read, we can navigate in the web page, and hope soon we can really use, or maybe you can really use this hub as a tool to develop something new and something useful for the health sector. After several internal brainstorming meetings, several formal meetings with the Commission, DG DG Sante, HERA, and other important stakeholders, after several emails and exchanges with all the entrusted entities that are here today with us, entering, tiptoeing in a world that is new for us. Now we can see really that the hub is taking shape. Today, with the launch of the website and of the catalog, with a lot of products, a lot of use cases, but as already said, this is really the starting point of a journey that we would like to continue accompanying Copernicus program for, let's say, the entire duration of the program itself. So now and from now on, we have to keep the website, the hub, live, operational, and useful, looking toward the future of this hub. And to do so, I think that is really important and is really key, the support that we are asking to all the different actors, so to the entrusted entities that have to continue to support us, providing products and use cases, but also to collect feedback from the users that can help us to improve the different products and the different services. Is key, obviously, the support of the members of the advisory board. You met some of them today, but we are really in close coordination with them. And in particular, they are the experts that are going to guide us in this journey. Then, obviously, the support from the Commission, DG DEFIS in particular, but also DG Sant, again, JRC and ERA, to support us in developing the tool that should respond and has to respond to the EU policy. And last, obviously, the user. Working with them, and as said by Stan, really to understanding with them why they are looking for these products and which are the products, the information that they are really looking to. Some takeaway from this meeting that was some of the words were already mentioned by the previous speaker. So and also this takeaway are some needs that are already clear to us, I can say. So longer trends for specific indicator based on high-level quality of data and products. And obviously here with the Copernicus, we can play an important role. The multi-scale dimension of this topic, of the health topic. So not only global, not only European, but even national and local dimension. And this brings to me to the other part of our job that is on C3S and CAMS, National Collaboration Program. So how to fit these two different programs to better respond to the user. And last, the multi-sectoral approach that for Copernicus was already underlined several times during the discussion can be translated into multi-services approach or cross-services approach, including the interoperability that Vincent Henry mentioned before. So I think that is really a new phase for Copernicus, a new program that is starting in this direction, going outside the silos of the services. No, now we are really collaborating with the other entrusted entities to create something new, something useful in the different domain that the Commission has identified. So thank you in particular to Julie that put a lot of effort in developing the hub, and to all the colleagues that contributed to this, and to all the other, let's say, actors that were involved in this process, and we bothered them a lot with our requests and with our needs, let's say. So I think that we can close this session, yeah, and Julie, please, the floor back to you again. Thank you to everybody.
So thank you everybody for joining us today. I would like to have a final round of applause to all the speakers, all the contributors to the Health Hub, the one who has contributed in the past, but the one who will contribute in the future, because the hub is all yours, you're the users, so help us to shape it. So a full round of applause for all of you. And before I let you go to enjoy this nice place safely, we've talked about it, I would like to remind you that at 6:30 we have the group photo here on this level on the terrace. So come back at 6:30. Thank you very much.